If you want to learn more about the campaign prep and the narrative and all the miniatures that I had to prepare for this campaign, check out Scratch Builder Monthly July issue or join my Patreon. Welcome to MJ Hobby Corner. Today is day 2 of our campaign, the Ashyn province. In these videos, while I do show some mechanics, some of the important mechanics, we do not focus on tabletop roles or game mechanics. The idea is that we tell the story of the wargame, what those dice rolls tell us in terms of the story. Today we continue with our Knights of the Crimson Orchard. Day 2 of the campaign sees us going into the southern Galloways. Can Christopher liberate the Galloways once and for all before continuing? Only the dice can say. Okay, so this is my force tray, and here I have my 3 forces, and this is where I plan things before the logistic phase begins of every day. I'll look at my force tray and I'll do some troop swapping. These are the markers. Here is my main force, the guy with the red flag. We have the yellow force, which is a reserve force, and then I just did some troop swapping with between this force and this force. I actually added some arquebus troops from my yellow reserves into my main force and put my crossbows back into the yellow force. And then we have this guy here who doesn't have a flag, this little foot soldier, but I'm going to change that. I'm going to put a different colored flag. And this is my third force, my second reserve. Okay, now they have the cannon. It is the morning of day 2. The camp is ready to dismantle. One supply unit is paid to begin moving the main force into the Galloways road. The troops move south with their wagon and Christopher's entourage in the lead. The force reaches a small bridge right at the border between North and South Galloways. Suddenly, Christopher's seer receives a message from the Queen.
I have 2 units of Royal Infantry which will cost me 8 to send you. Use them wisely, you won't get that many again.
There is a sudden complication when Christopher crosses the border into South Galloways. A pre-rolled weather event is noted on the daily track. This morning, a thick fog envelops the south. The fog bank makes it impossible to see ahead. It envelops the countryside and some of the town of Marwood. Christopher has sent a mounted scout ahead, but can only spare 1 supply unit. The lay of the land is noted by the scout. There are flat fields and fence lines dissecting the fields where farms are carved into the landscape. But the scout cannot go too far and eventually returns to Christopher. Christopher gets the report and knows something is off. He also knows Lilith will return. He immediately sends a report to the Queen, notifying her of morning events. Her response was quick and decisive. A small sand clock indicates when to remove patches of fog in the logistic phase. But as it turns out, the fog does not burn out quickly and remains throughout the day. Another supply is paid to move the main army forward after the scout has joined the ranks. The force moves through what is now Marwood Road, closer to the town. Christopher keeps a close eye on the persistent fog. Christopher and his main force have now entered the southern Galloway, and I'm about to move my reserve force from the landing up to the Galloways north, which was where I was the previous day and fought the battle with Lilith. I want to have my reserve force there. I want to start moving things from the landing up to the Galloways. I'm very low on supplies. I've already used up like 5 today just to move my main force and to detach a scout. Now, as soon as I entered the southern Galloway, my scout reports a thick fog. Now, these fog events have already been pre-rolled before the campaign. There are little weather slots on each day. That was predetermined before the campaign, so I know I have to roll a weather event for today. And then on day 4, once day 4 comes, I have to roll another weather event. These things were done previously. Now, it turns out to be fog, and this fog is persistent. I don't know if it's a natural fog or if my enemy is playing with us. It could be Lilith. But I did not roll an encounter for the day. So it means that the day is quiet. That also means that my battle on this southern half is probably going to be at night. You increase the danger at night, and what's bad about this is that the night force, which is going to be Lilith, is going to have an extra unit. It's going to be able to roll an extra recruitment roll because the undead are stronger at night. I determined it's Lilith because she was already rolled in the previous game, so she's the leader that is kind of in charge of keeping the Galloways, occupied. So that's why I'm just going to continue. I'm not going to roll for another leader. So we will have another chance at Lilith. Will she come out in her strong form, or will she come out in her weaker form? Only the dice can tell. According to dice rolls, during the day, Christopher encounters no enemy army. Everything is eerily quiet. The force camps as night approaches. Another PEF roll, at +1 this time, gives a total of 7, so the camp suddenly hears the march of undead feet to the east. This will be a night battle. I begin placing dice representing enemy units. The dice are loosely formed into formations called bodies. The leader will be Lilith, as she has returned on the second night to finish the job. But what form will she have? Units are placed in the fog along the eastern edge, as the dice roll had revealed. Lilith is the attacker this time, so she deploys first. She also gets a +1 recruitment roll, giving her a total of 9 units, and that is because she has arrived at night. Undead get benefits during the night. When playing Warrior King solo, undead place much of their strength in the center, with either wing ready to hold off enemy flanking moves. The alarm sounds throughout camp as vague shapes get closer. Christopher, the defender, now deploys his force. But first, the sand clock is turned. This fog timer is activated every turn. When the sands run out, a patch of fog is removed. Christopher and his heavy cavalry deploy first on the right wing. Deployment continues with the center of the army. The camp and wagon remain in the rear, but this time the camp is the enemy objective. A patch of fog is removed as the sands of time run out. Christopher has deployed arquebusiers on the left, led by Captain Galen. A small force of mounted skirmishers holds back near the camp. A cleric is attached to the center lines, but the lines are bunched in a column formation. Christopher and his knights are in the right. War rating is then rolled with both Lilith and Christopher scoring a war rating of 3 according to the table. But Lilith has a slight advantage. She has 2 captains, giving her a total of 5 war rating. Christopher only has 1 captain this time. You see, in Warriors to be Kings, a captain takes up 1 recruitment roll as cost. I needed the second recruitment roll for the cleric. So, Lilith has war rating 5 and Christopher war rating 4. The battle's about to begin. This is a night battle, and so units can only see 8 inches in front of them. So they're going to be limited in the distance for ranges and in line of sight. What that means is that those dice representing units are going to remain dice until they get closer. So that increases a little bit of the fog of war. Those dice move 6 inches regardless of what they represent. And basically my camp is the enemy objective, so I have to defend this at all costs this time. The wagon will not move as in the previous game, and I have a couple of new units here, so we'll see how they go. All right, how they work. All right, and there's my fog timer, and we are ready to start the game. After spending war points to move the enemy forward, I almost forgot the fog timer. The fog timer is instantly activated before I move the skull dice forward. Lilith's right wing has moved, and she quickly spends her war rating to move the rest of her army forward into the fog when possible. Speaking of fog, a patch suddenly burns away, revealing more of the night battlefield. Both armies have had their turn. Lilith has moved forward. I still don't know what units are going to be revealed here. I do know what her center is composed of, but it is currently hidden among the fog. We have Christopher and his knights wheeled. That costs half their movement, and so then they completed their move here. So we'll see what Christopher has planned. Now my center has reformed into a broad front. That means they cannot move. They just spend the war point and they can reform. But that was a mistake because then it blocks my ranged troops here. These are my firearm troops. So I should have moved these guys first and then reformed these guys. But, all right, it's early on. Let's see what happens. My scouts are staying within the camp area. These are actually mounted skirmishers now on the tabletop. So the mounted skirmishers are going to stay here. And we'll see as Lilith approaches. As skull dice close to the 8-inch maximum line of sight distance of night, the units they represent are finally revealed. Unit types are determined by a couple of rolls on a force table for Lilith. The result is a dreaded vampire cavalry on their wolves, and archers to support them. Lilith then spends war rating to move her own center, again staying hidden in the fog. As the sands of time are depleted, this means another patch of fog burns away into the night. The turn passes over to me, and my cavalry has already moved, so my crossbowmen take a shot at the menacing forms in front of them.
Shooting is accomplished with two tests in Warriors to be Kings. The first uses a single die. This test is versus armor class. And with armor class 2 and my roll of 6, the enemy target is definitely hit. This hit then triggers a fire test by the enemy unit. This test is taken versus rep. The test is taken with 2d6. However, because of my night fighting house rule, all units get an extra d6 for cover. So, the vampires roll 3d6 and fail all 3. All these failures result in 2 steps of damage. This means a shaken result for the vampire cavalry. During Lilith's turn, vampire archers retaliate at my crossbowmen, but I pass my fired-on tests and they are fine. Soon the time comes when Lilith reveals herself. She is revealed with a simple die roll that determines she will be in bestial form. This means Christopher will be dealing with a slightly more powerful Lilith than his previous encounter. Lilith is not taking any chances and wants to crush the invaders. And what happened to Lilith's left wing, you might ask? She spends war points to move them forward. Meanwhile, the sands of time are almost depleted this turn. Another patch of fog will soon disappear.
Okay, these 2 dice have now been revealed as that batch of fog has cleared. The fog is almost clear on the table, and the results are some feral vampires, these guys right here, and a unit of ghost troops, which are right here. Okay, so there we go. These will now replace those dice.
War rating is spent to wheel cavalry and move it into position. The fog is clearing, and Christopher can see the vague forms of a new enemy. Feral vampires. An old, low fence is the only thing standing in the way of a perfect charge. Meanwhile, in the center, a fierce battle has broken out. Enemy units are shaken, but House Orchard troops also receive damage. In Warriors to be King, both sides in melee add modifiers to their rep stat according to circumstances on a melee table. A d6 roll is then added to each of those totals and compared. The higher total wins, but to determine damage, we have to look at how much the winning unit beat the loser. If the winner beats the loser by 3 or more, the result is 3 steps of damage and the enemy unit is instantly removed. Every unit having sustained melee damage rolls on the fight or flight test, which could add additional steps and cause a unit to rout while others to remain. The interesting thing is that since every unit is part of a body, the entire body can be affected by the result of that unit. While Lilith's center is definitely weakened, my own center forces have sustained a lot of damage. It's been a costly fight for the Crimson Orchard. Meanwhile, the ogre continues exchanging blows with soldiers long dead. Late in my turn, war points are spent to move the skirmish cavalry forward and fill in the gap left by the routers. According to the sands of time, another patch of fog is removed, and the table is almost clear. The battle is reaching its peak. It is now the second half of the game. Lilith spends war points to move forward in an effort to support her dwindling skeletons. She touches base with 2 units, thus reforming an understrength body. Meanwhile, more war points are spent on Lilith's side to fire a volley at my crossbowmen. Even with cover of night granting 3d6 instead of the usual 2d6, I fail my fired-on tests. I fail miserably, rolling 2 6s and a 5, well above the rep of 3 that the crossbowmen have, and they are instantly removed. Now my lines have weakened, exposing gaps, and my priest now stands alone and shaken. Lilith's left wing sees the ghost warriors splitting to form a second body. Lilith wants to exploit my weakness there. Not long after, my heavy cavalry begins this turn by performing a devastating charge on the feral vampires. Even the fence as cover did not save them from the heavy lances of my riders. The cavalry is disordered upon follow-up.
Okay, the mounted skirmishers launched all their javelins on the skellies, gave them a shaken result because they failed their fired-on test. Now they're going to do a fight or flight. They're going to do it on a rep 4 rather than rep 3. And that's because Lilith is in contact with them. She's part of their body now. So they're going to do this morale test, and that is the only modification that they have. So they need under a 4. And the skellies roll. Okay, 1 pass, 1 failure is all gain 1 step. So the entire body gains 1 step, and that means that those skellies are out of the picture. So these gain 3 step, they are out, and then everybody else, including Lilith, gains 1 step of damage and are disordered.
The ogre finishes off the skeletons in front of him, and any hope Lilith had of causing my center to break. With shouts and growls, the ogre eagerly moves forward, well ahead of his body formation. This is called involuntary movement, and he is now a separate body. This move finishes my turn since I run out of war rating. Not too much later, Lilith sees her chance and attacks the ogre in the rear. At rep 5, she had no problem routing him. The situation becomes desperate when the cleric is felled by arrows and his neighboring units have gone from disordered back up to shaken.
Alright, the game is now over and Lilith has been destroyed. She is out of the table. She suffered a rear attack by the mounted skirmishers. There are some ghosts coming in on the flank, but the skirmishers avoided them because they can't really do anything about the ghosts. They have no magic weapons. Our cleric was felled by arrows. And I'm going to say if he fails the post-recruitment, the post-routed rolls that we're going to roll, we're going to say he's dead just for the sake of the story, not that he just routed. He was taken out, and that made the rest of the body shaken when they saw him fall. But the skirmishers took revenge, took Lilith out. As far as the right flank, Christopher and his heavy knights are having a little trouble there. They're still disordered. They separated into 2 different bodies in order to negotiate the terrain. They demolished the feral vampires, even with the cover in front of them. But as they crossed the cover, they became disordered. So that really slowed them down. They were going to try to come around and hit the rear. But either way, the enemy army is almost completely destroyed, with the exception of the ghost. The camp and the supplies are safe. Now, my arquebus troops were here. They didn't really move much. I kept them in the rear as a reserve to try and block anyone that's coming forward, particularly that cavalry, which is interesting. They kept surviving the entire game. Like, they kept, their fight and flight tests. They kept passing. So they kept going from shaken to the sworded, to shaken to the sworded. The cleric at one time cast a spell on them, failed. It was just very interesting. I played a total of about 11 turns, or a little bit over, say 5 rounds, if we were to consider rounds. So, pretty good. And Lilith is out of the picture thanks to the brave actions of Christopher's army. However, we have some defectors. Okay, so this is a straightforward roll. We roll 2 dice versus rep, and you do have to roll below the rep, not equal to the rep. I think I was doing that before, so that's incorrect, but it is under the rep. So 2 dice, and they are rep 3 with the captain. 1 success, 1 failure. And router returns only if the battle is won. The battle is won, so the captain manages to convince them to come back. So that's good. Now the crossbowmen. 1 success, 1 failure. They return if you win the battle. Yes, they did return. They changed their mind. And now the ogre. He is rep 4, by the way. 1 success, 1 failure. So 1 success here, 1 failure. And again, he does return. Man, they all change their minds. All right, let's see. Was the cleric killed outright, or did he just rout and could now return? Let's see what happens. Oh, 2 failures. He's only rep 4. So basically, the arrows just killed him on sight. And the cleric is now down. So he is out of the picture. The only casualty I suffered. Not too bad. All of my routers came back. Not too bad for Christopher. The queen will be happy.
Let it be known that your house is not a house of cowards. I shipped reinforcements and 10 supply. However, there is a problem.
A problem indeed. The end of this battle has triggered a secret event roll by Julie. The result of 3 is compared to a table, which means I have the wrong map. Map number 1, the map I started this campaign with, is wrong. It has the wrong geographical relationship between tables. My ultimate objective, table number 4, where the final battle will take place, is now positioned farther away and at a different angle than I originally thought. And while I am sure it is not solely the cartographer's fault, my queen will show mercy on them.
Off with their heads!
My army thus returns to camp as the sun rises. They are exhausted from a night's battle. There is no time to rest, however. But at least Lilith is destroyed, and the town of Marwood, and indeed southern Galloways, is liberated. Christopher can now count on additional supply from these towns, and clerics too. The day track advances to day 3. What happens next? Only the dice can tell.